Welcome into 5-Minute Fantasy presented to you by the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Today, we're going to talk about 5 quarterback comeback candidates for the 2024 season. Before we get into that, go to Underdog Fantasy, download, and use promo code FFSGPN. So let's talk about Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, he's going as quarterback 7 in Underdog Fantasy rankings. And why? Well, that's because this guy last year had 3 passing touchdowns, 136 rushing yards, 4 TDs in 4 games, 18.2 fantasy points per game as a rookie. And we saw what this team did with Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew became a fantasy viable option in this offense. He got paid. We also saw Shane Steichen. He was a huge proponent with Jalen Hurts in his career year. So this offense is set up for success. Anthony Richardson and his rushing upside has QB1 overall potential, and that's why he's a comeback candidate. Next guy is Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you can't have, a worse season than Aaron Rodgers did, only playing 1 drive. But Aaron Rodgers is also having to come back from a very poor 2022 campaign. And one of the reasons he had such a bad year is that he's always been a low turnover guy. He doesn't rush the ball a lot, but when you throw for almost 4,000 yards every year and you have 25 to 35 touchdowns with 2, 3, 4, 5 interceptions, that's going to be a top 10 fantasy season. He had a career low in touchdowns with 25 for a full season, and then he, on top of it, had 12 interceptions, which is a career high his last year in Green Bay. Look for those numbers to stay steady, about 4,000 yards. Look for him to throw about 30 touchdowns. And if he can keep the interceptions in the single digits, you're going to have a top 10 season from a guy that's going as the quarterback 20 on Underdog Fantasy. And then we're looking at Kyler Murray. He's right now going as the QB6, so I think this one is not necessarily a shock to anybody. But let's talk about a guy that's had an awesome offseason. He's year 2 off of the ACL. He goes and gets Marvin Harrison Jr. We saw Trey McBride and what he can do last year, and now they went and added Zay Jones. I know it's not a sexy play, but Zay Jones has been a good NFL receiver for the last few years. And so Kyler Murray, you saw it last year. They were not afraid to let him run even after the ACL injury, even when the season really had nothing to do. And they add Michael Wilson as well. And then I love Trey Benson. Trey Benson coming out of the backfield. James Conner gets hurt. Trey Benson's right there. You can see Trey Benson a little early. He's the running back in Florida State. Good rushing upside, but a great receiving back. Kyler Murray is in for an amazing 2024, and you can get him at QB6 right now, QB1 overall potential. Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow disappointed so many people last year. Everybody bought in. Everybody was excited based on the 2022 season. And things just were not good. He got hurt in the offseason. He was playing through injury to start the season. He finally started to get it together. Then he had another injury, which ended his season. But what did we see? Jake Browning lit it up. Jake Browning became a thing. Jake Browning is still there. He wasn't able to be a free agent and get paid. But Jake Browning showed us that there's nothing wrong with this offense. And we know with Joe Burrow, there's nothing wrong with Joe Burrow. He gets Jamar Chase. He gets T. Higgins. And, yeah, he's a little expensive. He's going to be your QB. He's going to be QB8 right now. But as far as your upside, we saw in 2022, we saw in 2021, Joe Burrow can be a fantasy monster. And you can go get him right now while other people are sleeping on him. And then the last guy on the list is Deshaun Watson. I know. He's a dirtbag. This is not what we're here for. We're here for fantasy football. And Deshaun Watson is the cheapest of the bunch. Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson are my late quarterback options of this episode. Deshaun Watson, we saw last year, he had 2 20-point games. Then he got hurt. We saw Njoku at the end of the year go crazy. They've added Jerry Jeudy. They've added Jamari Thrash. This looks to be more of a run-first